Grand Dame's Ghost Story. I don't know if you ever tell your children ghost stories. Some mothers don't, but our mother, even though she was from Germany, believed in ghosts. She taught all her children to be brave, both in their minds and bodies. And even though we loved hearing ghost stories, especially if they were real, we were pretty skeptical about them. We knew all about ghosts, doppelgangers, will-o'-the-wisp, blue lights, and all that. We loved it when our mother would tell us stories about spooky things. The story I'm going to tell you, she told us one stormy night. We were gathered around her chair in her cozy room, in front of a warm fire, eating nuts and apples. We listened while she told us a true story, one that her grandmother told her, a story her grandmother witnessed herself. It was a scary night. The wind howled around the house like lost spirits crying out for help. The rain beat against the windows. The trees, twisted and tortured by the wind, groaned and swayed until their branches almost touched the ground. Bright flashes of lightning pierced through the closed shutters and heavy curtains. The thunder roared so loud, it made your blood run cold. It was the kind of night that made you want to shut out all the noise, close the curtains, stir the fire, curl up in an armchair with your feet on the fender, and think about something cheerful. But I was all alone. No one else was in the house except the servants, and the servants' quarters were separate from the main house, because I didn't like to have them near me. And my family wasn't here. It was a night just like that when Nancy Black died. What a terrible night for a soul to leave its earthly home and go out into the vast unknown, I said aloud as I woke from my thoughts, pulled my heavy coat closer around me, moved my armchair closer to the fire, and settled in, burying my feet in the footrest to warm them because I felt strangely cold. I was in the library. It was my usual room because I rarely used the parlors. What was the point? My books were my friends, and I loved being with them. My children were either dead or married and gone, and the big, empty parlors always felt gloomy and sad. The ghosts of happy times haunted them, and I didn't want to go in there. It was a long, wide room across the hall from the parlors, stretching the length of the house. It was lined with bookshelves from floor to ceiling. My husband's father had been a book lover, and my husband had been the same way, so the shelves held many old, rare books that were worth a lot of money. The fire, although it was burning brightly, didn't light up even half of the room. I was sitting in the corner by the fireplace, and I could see the whole room. I was watching the shadows dancing on the furniture and shelves as the flames shot up, flickered, and then died down, leaving darkness that would break into strange shapes as the firelight flared up again. While I was watching the light and dark shadows, the howling of the storm outside caught my attention. There were strange noises like tapping on the windows and sobs and sighs, as if someone was begging to come in from the wild storm. As I sat there, I thought about Nancy Black, my old school friend, who had loved me dearly, and the night when she died. I rested my head on my hand and stared into the fire, thinking about her strange life and even stranger death. I wondered what had happened to the money and jewels I knew she had once owned. While I was sitting there, a strange feeling came over me. It wasn't fear, but it felt like if I looked up, I would see something frightening. A shiver, not from the cold, ran from my head to my feet, and I felt like someone was breathing icy cold air on my forehead. The same feeling you get when you hold a piece of ice on your cheek. It fluttered over my face and finally settled around my lips, as if the unseen person was caressing me, making me feel terrified. But I'm not afraid, nervous, or imaginative. So I pushed away the fear that had come over me, turned around, and looked up. And there, so close to me that my hand, which I instinctively reached out, passed through her, stood Nancy Black. It was Nancy Black, but not really Nancy Black. Her whole body was see-through, like your hand looks when you hold it up to a strong light. Her clothes, the same clothes she wore when she was alive, had a wavy, flickering look, like flames, but they didn't seem to burn. "In the name of God, Nancy Black, what brought you here, and where did you come from?" I exclaimed. A hollow whisper answered me. "Thank you, my old friend, for speaking to me, and, oh, how deeply I thank you for thinking of me tonight. I will have peace." Peace. I heard that echoed, and a mocking laugh rang through the room, making her tremble. "I've been near you often, but I couldn't find you at the right time until tonight. I'll tell you why I came, but you don't need to know where I'm from. It's enough to say that if I were happy, I wouldn't be here, doing this, on a night like this. It's only when the weather is wild and the wind wails and moans that we come out. When you hear those sounds, it's the souls of the lost you're hearing, crying out for help. That's when they wander, to and fro, their only escape from their terrible home of pain and suffering, without end. I've come to tell you that you have to go to my old house, and in the back room that I always kept locked, you have to have the carpet pulled up near the fireplace. You'll see a floorboard with a knot in it. Take that out, and you'll find what caused me to lose my soul. Say prayers for me, because it's good to pray for the dead. Give the money and jewels to the poor. Bury the other things you find in holy ground, and pray for them and me. Ah, Jeanette, you thought your old friend, although strange and odd, was pure and innocent. It's a painful part of my punishment that I have to change your thoughts about me. Farewell. Don't fail me, and I won't bother you again. But whenever you hear that wind howl and sweep around the house like tonight, know that the lost are near. It's their swift flight through space, escaping from the pain of memory and guilt, that makes that sound. So that you don't think you're dreaming tomorrow, here is a token." And she touched the palm of my hand with her fingertips. "As you can see, my child, to this day, there are 3 red spots on the palm of my hand that nothing will get rid of. Don't fail me, and pray for us, Jeanette. Pray." And with a sad, longing look and a deep, sobbing sigh, Nancy Black disappeared from my sight. "Am I dreaming?" I exclaimed, as I stood up from my chair and rang the bell. When the servant came in, I told him to tend the fire and light the lamps, and then I went to look around the room to see if something unusual about the furniture had caused the ghost to appear. But there was nothing unusual. I told him to send my maid to come to my room, because I didn't want to stay in the library any longer that night. While my maid was getting me ready for bed, she said, "Did you burn your hand, madam?" I looked down quickly, and I saw 3 dark red spots on the palm of my left hand. They looked strange, like they had been burned by hot iron. But the skin was soft, not burned or painful. I made an excuse and didn't mention it again, and sent her away quickly so I could think about the strange thing that had happened. There were the marks on my hand. I couldn't get rid of them, and they didn't fade. In fact, the dark red made the rest of my palm look pale. Could I have been asleep and dreamed it all, and somehow done this to myself? I thought about it, but I decided that I would go to Nancy Black's old house tomorrow and find out what had happened. I had to wait until tomorrow. Nancy Black was an old friend from my childhood. She had owned a big house in town and lived there alone. When she died, she left all her property to me. When morning came, I took the keys and, with my maid, went over to Nancy's house. It had been untouched since she died, which was sudden and a bit strange. The furniture was still the same as when she died. We went to the room Nancy had told me about. I told Sarah to pull up the carpet, and, sure enough, there was a floorboard with a knot in it. I sent her out of the room and lifted the board myself. There, between the boards, was a long box with the lid unlatched. When I opened it, I was horrified to see two skeletons, an infant and a woman, small and delicate. In a flash, I realized that I was looking at all that was left of Nancy Black's young sister, a girl of 17 who had left home mysteriously years ago. She had died while she was away, at least that was the story Nancy had told, and no one had ever doubted it, because she told the story so convincingly. They had become orphans when Lucy was only 2 and Nancy was 18. Nancy had devoted her life to taking care of her younger sister. When she discovered that Lucy had become pregnant, she had, in her pride of her name and status, killed her sister and the baby to hide her shame. She had lived all those sad years in the house with her terrible secret. Around the box, piled on all sides, were money and jewels. A piece of parchment with writing on it was among them, Lucy's share of our father's estate. I followed Nancy's wishes exactly, because I believed she had come to me that night. To avoid a scandal, I told our priest what had happened, and with his help, we had the remains buried quietly in holy ground. The money and jewels were given to the poor, and I turned the old house into a home for women who had nowhere else to go. Every morning and night, when I pray for forgiveness for Nancy Black and peace for her troubled soul. The end. If you like the story, hit that like button and subscribe for more videos. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Was there anything that surprised you? Who's your favorite character in the story? I can't wait to hear your thoughts.